in general. So first of all, your classroom management, of course, is very solid, and I really appreciate that. You never have to worry about like the relationships aspect that you build with your kids. As a matter of fact, being so like caring with kids even outside your classroom, like Elias, that I see you building those relationships around the campus, I really appreciate that. I want to honor you for that. The second thing about some more precise praise is that it was great to see the kids working together and discussing problems today. I put an exclamation point on that because one of the things that concerns me about all of my classes in general is that ability that we give, or the opportunity that we give students to work together to solve problems. And when I walked into your class today, you were out and about, and the kids were working together on their, what do you call it, the partner practice. And so that was awesome. And I know that we've discussed this in the past, and I really appreciate the confidence that you're showing in your students. And so I do want to ask a question as we move towards a key lever that I want us to think about today. Why is it important to monitor your students as they work as partners?
Well, initially to keep them on task, to ensure that they're on task. Right, so yeah, circulation can be helpful for that, monitoring that they're staying on task, that the conversation, that they don't need support, to basically ensure that they're on task and to provide support if need be and stuff like that. And then, yeah, once again, I always fall into the same trap of kind of gravitating toward kids I know they're going to need initial help and getting them going, kind of thing like that.
Yeah, I saw that too, and that, and specifically Arthur playing with the overhead while you were letting the kids work in groups. Yeah. I think
he's been doing that all year.
Yeah, I know. It's Arthur, right?
Yeah.
And so I want you to think about this because we strive, to get everybody during their partner work at 100%. And when I was looking at everybody, I would think that about 75 or 80% were like super focused on talking about and setting up their problem, but the other 20% were like really not doing that. And especially Arthur. Arthur was playing with the thing, and I know Arthur's been doing that all year. I know he's a special case, but I want to kind of think about how we can encourage all of the kids to meet your expectation. And so I'm going to show you this exemplar video of a teacher that you know. And I want you to think about, as you watch this video, two things. What is the teacher doing? What does she do or say that encourages 100% participation during her monitoring?
Start typing the episode questions. As you're typing, Manny, I'm going to be coming around. I'm going to be quoting your paper. So this is what I'm looking for today. I'm looking for the grammar part. I don't care about this part up here. If you guys are doing great, you have capital letters, you have periods, there's full sentences, then I'm going to do your star, right? Your college ready. If I write one of the green ones on your paper, you need to fix it. So if you have missing handwriting, you fix it. If you have something spelled wrong, I'm going to put an SP and you're going to figure it out. Capitalize something, punctuation is periods, and then indenting, you don't have to worry about that one, okay? Alright, so while you are working right now, while you're typing, I'm Mosemac on the episode question, and you should not have your headphones on, so take them off. I'm going to put it on for your favorite question. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. You should be done typing the episode questions in 10 minutes. You want to talk to me? Go ahead and get started.
Okay, so what did this teacher do or say that really kind of made it so that the kids knew what their expectation was?
Well, she kind of laid out step by step what the expectations were and what she was going to be doing to check that they were meeting those expectations.
Right. So she was very specific about her instruction. Good. Yeah, I agree exactly. And so, thinking back to today, what do you think is the gap between what you saw this exemplar teacher doing and what your kids heard as they started their partner practice the second time when I was there?
Right. So for my partner practice, it's essentially, I haven't used the aggressive monitoring as part of the partner practice. I guess that's something I could start incorporating. I've been using aggressive monitoring as part of independent practice, which precedes the partner practice. Partner practice, I'm just looking more for them to have a dialogue about the problem. And I have not been incorporating the circulation model. And then moving into the partner practice, it's pretty normalized as far as expectations and sound levels and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll do every partner practice. I will not remind them, but sometimes I'll remind them of expectations for volume, expectations for staying on topic, expectations for the 4 L's. But I haven't incorporated actual, like, any kind of marking.
Right. And so if you remember, there are 2 types of aggressive monitoring, remember? The first one is the procedural, and then the other one is content.
Right.
And so what I would, I'm going to just go back to my script here. So that leads me to the key lever. So the key lever, for me, for this session that I observed, definitely was aggressive monitoring, no question about it. I think there was a great opportunity to get those 20%, because you said it yourself right now, you gravitate towards the kids that you know are going to struggle a little bit, but remember that part of aggressive monitoring, especially for the procedural loop, you go to the kids that are really going to be good at it first, because you know they're going to be good at it.
Right.
And then that gives you time for the kids who would struggle normally to get on task with setting up or having that discussion. But whatever specific instructions you have for that piece, I think that would be a great, action step. So aggressive monitoring is the action step. And so if you could write this down, what you're going to do is check students' partner discussion work to determine whether they're learning what you are teaching. And so how you're going to do this is, and you can tell me we can have a discussion about this. What I put is, I think it would have been really good for the kids to have an exemplar, so that they know what they were supposed to, and it might work that sentence frames for discussion, or I think they were writing the ×2, the +2 and the -2.
Right.
Some of them were writing it. So whatever exemplar you want to use, I think that would be really helpful to have an exemplar for what you want your kids to work to look like, or discussion to look like. And then so right before you release the students for their partner work, give specific directions and timestamps as your expectations. You already did this. You already did the timestamp.
Yeah.
You went 2 minutes, I think. I think it would add.
I thought it was 6 minutes.
You're right. It was 6 minutes. But for you to say, like Ms. Walsh did, this is what I'm expecting
Within these 6 minutes.
within these 6 minutes.
Right.
And then number 3, check student progress against your exemplar. So when you have your exemplar with you and you tell the kids, I'm looking at this and yours needs to look the same. And then you can do a procedural loop that way.
Right. Yeah, that section was kind of breaking, that section of the problem set was kind of breaking down the procedure, the process that we had been working on, into like different steps, and like rewording it in a way to like see if they could still understand understand the material, understand how to do it,
Oh, so
even
perfect.
though it was being presented differently than we had been working on it with. That's specifically why I had them working with partners on that part. Is because I wanted them to try to figure that out together, get some assistance, because it was being presented slightly differently than the problems we had been doing. I knew it was going to trick them.
Oh, good. It was like a misconception that you were planning for.
Right. Yeah.
So even more so, to have like them discuss it first and then show your exemplar to see if they got it right or wrong. So how would something like, let's talk about that. How would something like this look like for partner discussions? Like, let's take a couple of minutes and talk about that, and maybe even script it out.
So, I mean, I guess it would look the same as independent practice. I do a procedural loop first, just to make sure, to kind of just use proximity to kind of initiate everybody being on task, and very briefly kind of help certain students get going on the problem. And I mean, I understand you're supposed to go to the students who, according to the model that you presented, you're recommending that you go to the students that you know are going to be pretty good with the problem, and then the students who are struggling later. But like instinctually, I feel like the students who are going to struggle with the problem will kind of just sit there and do nothing until, or certain students. There's a few students in the class that I know they'll just sit there and do nothing until you kind of come and kind of motivate them and get them going. And that's why I kind of.
And specific groups for procedural loops that might help in the evolution and the process of it.
Right.
And so thinking about Arthur, for example, you know Arthur's going to be really struggling, so I'm going to go to Arthur first.
He's actually doing well with that. That was one of the problems is I knew he's actually getting the answer really quickly and then messing around.
Well, yeah.
Right.
See,
so
so that's a whole different animal because he is a very intelligent kid, but he has like his behavior issues, right? And so it's not a dead set rule. It really depends on whether it's procedural or contextual and what the individual makeup of the class. But generally speaking, there's a lot of advantages to go into areas that you know the kids are not going to struggle with, because then you can scan the room and stuff for others. So what would something like this look like for this lesson?
So we got checking aggressive monitoring during partner practice is essentially what we're discussing here. So what would it would look like? I guess checking partner work would not be first. So listing, this would probably be first. So listing listing expectations. Or actually it could be listing, because I want to discuss the procedure for how to do the problem, listing the steps of the procedure for how to do the problem, like you were saying earlier. But also, if I'm revisiting expectations for behavior during that, what would be the order you think would be better? To discuss the expectations for behavior followed by the process, the expectations for the process first, or vice versa? I'm not exactly sure if order is that.
That's a great question. I think that because the makeup of your classroom is for example today, I want everybody in slant, and so you do a great job already of having the kids give you 100%, and so I think the content for you, like the goal, the exemplar, that whatever you're doing, we're gonna do a setup of the problem. In order to do this, you have to partner talk. Your discussion has to be, whatever those rules are for that topic. And then while you do that, I'm looking to see if you're setting up the problem right, according to, whatever instructions you have. So it's kind of like a mix. But because you do such a good job of getting the kids at 100%, I think that giving the objective for what the item is, not the objective for the class, but the objective for that item, and then what the expectation is going to look like, I think would be a good blend. You know?
So as far as doing the problem, especially with algebra, it fits well with the process that we're using for note taking and stuff like that.
Yes.
So as far as going through the previous problem before I set them off in partner practice on one or two problems, depending on how technical or difficult they are. So listing steps. So when we talk about steps, we're talking about the annotation. We're talking about the annotation. We're talking about identifying the operation. We're talking about the order in which the problem is placed, and we're talking about the calculation error. That's the all right. So those are the notes that we set up. So going through that, but not just going through the steps, but as we not just saying, okay, don't forget to annotate, do your operation order and all that stuff, but having the exemplar. So all this needs to be tied into an exemplar. All right, so I'm going to use the exemplar to show what the annotation needs to look like, to show what identifying the operation looks like, to show what deciphering the order looks like, and to show what the calculation error would represent if you had made one or not made one. So starting off by, and I have this kind of written on a piece of paper that I'll project as I'll do this sometime, but listing steps and an exemplar. Alright, and then clarifying behavioral expectations. Alright, clarifying behavioral expectations. Or expectation. After I clarify behavioral expectations,
And let them go.
right, so establish time frame or
Mhm.
something?
Yeah, timestamp.
Okay, timestamp, okay. Establish timestamp,
And then determine which kids you want to hit first according to your loop.
okay. And then use pre-established, what was the word we were using at? Pre-established, was it loop that we were calling it?
Yeah, the monitoring loop.
Okay,
Okay,
pre-established.
we call it laps.
And then A, procedural first. And then B, what do you call the second loop?
Content.
Content, thank you. And content loop, and then here we are marking student work.
Okay.
Alright,
Um,
sorry.
So let's kind of summarize. I mean, like, even in actual time, I mean, not that you would have to script it all out right now, but what would that sound like? Students?
What it sounds students? Be like, oh,
Scholars. You call them scholars.
I'd be like, okay, so we just completed our guided practice. It seems like we have a sense of what we're supposed to do. We're going to move into a partner practice now. But as part of our partner practice, these are the steps that you will need to take to complete this problem appropriately. All right, remember, as mathematicians, if you're going to be a successful mathematician, that means you're going to have to learn how to annotate your prompts, how to annotate your real-world scenarios. This is what annotation looked like on our previous problem. And I'll show like the highlighting and then the clarification of certain academic vocabulary. When it comes to identifying your operation, being able to identify operation is also part of the annotation process. You're going to have to use the vocabulary, use the word in your prompt. So in this problem, if it says take away, this implies minus or subtraction, and that's part of your annotation process. Once you've identified your operation, the next is the most challenging part, which is determining the order of your problem. In this previous problem, it's this vocabulary that that mandated that we put this problem in this order and go through that. And then from that point, you just need to try to make sure you're doing your calculations correctly. Sometimes, even I at this point, Mr. Andrade, everybody makes calculations errors. It will happen. If I come around and put a CE, just go back, review your problem, try to figure out where you made your calculation error. In the case of our last problem, if I had miscalculated this multiplication problem, it would have changed the whole entire answer, right? And I would have came around and put a CE on my paper, and that means revisit your calculations. If all of this is done correctly, I will be coming around and marking a heart or a star by a paper to say everything is done correctly, and you may continue to work with your partner. Moving into behavioral expectations, remember we're following the 4 L's class procedure as we've been doing all year. But the most important rule, other than making sure we have an appropriate volume, is to what? And then usually somebody raises their hand and they say, stay on topic. And I go, exactly. All right, so I'll be coming around to ensure that we're all staying on topic. Remember, this is part of your participation grade. If we're all staying on topic, then not only are we improving our grade, but we're doing the more important thing than keeping our grade up, which is learning and helping each other learn. This partner practice will be set up for 6 minutes. All right. I'll be coming around. All right, you guys, good luck. Learn, help each other, and your 6 minutes starts in 3, 2, 1. Have fun.
And it might be that the pre-established loop, it might be like A, you do a loop for annotation. B, this isn't going to be, it's going to be more fluid than what I'm describing. But depending on how many problems you give them, it may be that these go down. That the first one is them setting things up, like you described, and then
Like
you go
an
back to
annotation, yeah.
annotation loop, and then an operation loop, maybe something like that.
Yeah, these could kind of be the first loop, or the second loop kind of thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, what do you think about that?
Oh, good.
I like it. Thank you very much.
I mean, I've been kind of doing something similar to this during independent, but when we were talking about it, it was all independent practice. I'm like, today I kind of like clicked, like, why am I not doing that during private practice? I couldn't do that during
Yeah,
private
the more they get it, the more, you know, like Nina's a master. She's like, this is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna do it. You know, and then she goes around and now Miss Tran is like caught steam with this, and it's made just dramatic changes in these bid signs. So I keep going back to, like, the kids need continuous specific feedback so that they can know what the expectation is, and then you get more participation. So, all right, thank you very much.
Cool.
This concludes our session. I appreciate your participation today. Good luck with this.
Let me know anytime you want to hang out and talk about